Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 24 of Code Lyoko, Ghost Channel. And this episode is pretty much, once again, this episode opens up in Lyoko with the group deactivating a tower, much like it, much like in the episode where XANA messed with the devirtualization program. And just like in that episode, they pretty much stop all the monsters and deactivate it and turn back time. However, when time gets reversed and Jeremy's back, we see Jeremy in science class, and while the teacher's taking attendance, he tries talking to Odd and Ulrich, only they're not there. He's wondering what's going on, and then suddenly the video glitches. And suddenly we're seeing the exact same scene being repeated, except now Odd and Ulrich are there, but Jeremy's acting kind of cold and distant. And then when the teacher actually does call on Jeremy, Odd, and Ulrich for their attendance, Jeremy ends up correcting the teacher, saying that while the formula she wrote on her blackboard is that she had written on the blackboard is correct, it fails to take in some kind of mathematical equation or so forth, and thus is inherently flawed, and she thinks he's correct. As such, Odd and Ulrich are a bit kind of find this strange, but the video once again glitches back, and we once again see Jeremy in class, except now he's running out, and he then runs to what would presumably be Yumi's class, only she's not there either. So something is going wrong. And as such, Jeremy ends up trying to contact Aelita and tries to figure out if there's something going on. And she hasn't picked up on anything yet. But once they hang up, Aelita starts picking up tremors, which means that XANA is active again. As such, she goes to investigate, and we soon start to kind of put the pieces together. As in Aelita's travels, she can't seem to find them anywhere, and Jeremy even gets caught by Jim talking to Aelita, and thus brought to the principal because people are wondering where Yumi, Ulrich, and Odd are. And since Jeremy is such close friends with them, he's probably their only clue to finding them. Jeremy says he doesn't know, but then he gets a call from Aelita and says he has to take it, and the principal says he'll give him 3 minutes. At which point Aelita says that something's going wrong. She feels tremors and they're not there. So pretty much, and so they have to find a way to get Jeremy to the factory, because if XANA's awake again, they're going to need to find a way to fix all this. As such, Aelita, who apparently has done a bit more hacking, has done a bit of hacking off screen, tells Jeremy to go to the boiler room, and thus she hacks the school systems to cause the boilers to send out steam, which manages to blind Jim and the principal and allows Jeremy to make a getaway to the factory. As such, when he gets to the factory, Aelita says that he checks the scanners first, they're not there, and when he talks to Aelita, it says she found a kind of sound bite. Kind of like a sound bite, some kind of sound or system or whatever. Sorry, I don't remember. I don't know computer terminology. And so Jeremy pulls it up on his screen, and it turns out that what's going on is that XANA has pretty much created a Lotus Eater world. What had happened was that when the group managed to turn back time, XANA managed to pretty much trap Odd, Ulrich, and Yumi in a false world. That it looks close enough to the real world so that it fools them, but unfortunately he has some inconsistencies. During lunch period, Sissy's wearing the wrong shirt, and when Odd points it out to her, she just says it's a new fad. People end up glitching and repeating what they're supposed to do. Pretty much, while it's a good enough approximation, it's not one to one, and unfortunately kind of has some technical errors here and there, which while the group picks up on, they're not exactly they're not exactly being able to put the pieces together. The one that actually realize that something's wrong first is Yumi, as she's the one that sees the glitches more. Like during class, her teacher ends up glitching slightly and then gets back and repeats what she said. During gym, she saw Nicholas and Herb arguing before they glitched and repeated their fight. And when she tries talking to Jeremy, he's acting more distant, which the group's been noticing throughout the whole thing, and that's because Jeremy's XANA. Yeah, in the same way that Jeremy created a fake Yumi earlier in an episode, the Jeremy in this simulation is pretty much Xana's proxy, keeping the whole place maintained and keeping the whole place maintained and just trying to fill the role. And you can pretty much guess that it's Xana based on his behavior, as it was pretty close to how Xana reacted when he was pretending to be Yumi earlier in the season. He's correcting people on trivial matters, which with the math problem. He's more cold and distant. When he actually talks, it's more it doesn't feel like it's human. It's like he's actually a robot trying to imitate human speech. And he seems to be taking pot shots at other people, when Yumi calls the fake Jeremy out for not taking part in gym class. He said, "Oh, I talked with Jim. He says I'm excused, and you just gotta know how to handle him." And then he sees Odd and Ulrich doing push-ups, like unlike them. It's it's just Xana to being Xana, taking pot shots and just being a general asshole. As such, with this new knowledge, Jeremy realizes they have to go in and find a way to deactivate this phantom world, which means they need to get in contact with Odd, Ulrich, and Yumi. Aelita says that she won't be able to do it herself, but Jeremy says that maybe he could. Sorry, ear thing. So Jeremy says that he can. So as such, Jeremy says that if they can if they can hack into the signal, he can be virtualized into the fake world. And while Aelita is a bit hesitant, they ultimately agree to do it. And as such, Aelita takes control of the virtualization program. Jeremy goes down to the scanner, and she manages to send him into the virtual Caddick, which it turns out was also part of Xana's plan. This place wasn't just to trap them, it's once again one of his plans to try and get rid of them. As the instant Jeremy arrives, Jeremy uses his computers and has the gym simulation go after him. And what I kind of like is it definitely has the makings of the fake Lotus Eater world stuff. As the instant the simulation starts to come through, he starts kind of dropping the facade in certain areas. Like, he actually makes Jim look more monstrous, with his skin turning kind of gray, his eyes blank, and his hair kind of standing straight up like he was a Dragon Ball Z character. And as such, he has the fake Jim go after Jeremy, and so Jeremy has to run away. But in the meantime, the group realizes that something is wrong themselves when Yumi gets back to her house and her parents are glitching out themselves. As such, she calls all Odd and Ulrich and says they have to go to the factory because something's wrong. But she tells them not to call Jeremy because she's picking up on his negative vibes as well. And it makes sense that she would kind of probably pick up on these stuff as well, because again, the Phantom Yumi thing, odds are she probably would be more cautious of stuff like this, and I think she probably would be keeping an eye on Jeremy like that. It also helps that she's the only one that actually has been seeing these glitches firsthand, so. And while Odd and Ulrich have noticed some things are wrong, they've never actually seen the glitches. They've never really seen the glitches up close. As such, the three of them make their way to the factory, and Jeremy manages to try and evade more of Xana's facsimiles, like with Jim, like the fake Jim, and then the Nicholas and Herb. But the group managed to get to the factory, but because again this is a fake world, there's no link to Lyoko. At which point, Jeremy appears and tries to tell him that he was contacted by Aelita, saying that Xana's trying to destroy Lyoko and that they have to get down there right away. And while Odd and Ulrich are ready to believe this, Yumi still is still hesitant, which ultimately gets confirmed when Jeremy does manage to make it to the factory and into the same room. And immediately we have the whole "who's the real one" type of thing. As Jeremy keeps trying to tell them that's Xana, this is all a fake world, and Xana ends up going around and saying the same thing. No, you're Xana, you're trying to trick us, and you don't want us to go to Lyoko. And as such, it is sort of back and forth, but they ultimately confirm who's the real Jeremy when they ask him how he got to the virtual world, and he says he used the scanners to come in, and the fake Jeremy says, "Ha, that proves you're not the real one." Jeremy's afraid of going in the scanners. Which they never really have gotten into, but it kind of makes sense he would, considering that the last time he tried to go to Lyoko, he wound up in a virtual limbo. So, and as such, the group realizes that who the fake Jeremy is, because while they would probably know this factoid as well, they're friends with Jeremy, and friends would do stuff like that for friends. And since XANA is a computer and is one of those evil cannot comprehend good type of villains, he can't understand this and has a breakdown and just completely drops the facade, transforming the Jeremy facsimile into this kind of monstrous form that's glowing. His voice is deep, and it's kind of where we get to the silliness again. And it's one of the aspects of XANA's personality that I don't like when he actually does go into the card-carrying villain type of thing, as he's maniacally laughing. He summons the facsimiles, yada yada, to hold him down. He ties Jeremy up, yada yada yada. He's just gloating about how he's so great, about how they're all gonna die, how he's gonna win, blah blah blah. Not like he doesn't really do that. He does actually, but he does say you're all going to die, ha ha ha. But thankfully, it's at that point that Aelita manages to find where the facsimile is in Lyoko, and it's like a giant dome, and so she manages to use her powers use her abilities to mess with the dome and pretty much cause the whole thing to destabilize, causing the simulation to fail and ejecting Jeremy from Lyoko. As such, Jeremy gets back to the main computer in the factory. He contacts the group, seeing if they're all right, and everything they're all in Lyoko, safe and sound. Though as a side effect of what Aelita did, they have no memory of being trapped. The last thing they remember doing is deactivating the tower before. As such, they explain the situation, and the episode ends with XANA kind of going to Plan B, sending a whole bunch of blocks after them. Which they pretty much say, oh, we can take these guys. So I mentioned how, and I actually really like this episode, and it's mostly just because I love the idea of a Lotus Eater world. It's one of the reasons why I liked Perfect Day back in the classic Ben 10. I did talk about that when I looked at that episode, and as such, this episode it's one of those types of episodes. When you see them. Like, when you see it, in the beginning, when you see the parallel versions of the same events, you think that maybe there's just something wrong. They're on different frequencies, but then you start to figure out which one is the fake one right away, as you start seeing the glitches more in the fake Caddick, and you're able to figure out which one is you're able to figure out that XANA is disguising himself as Jeremy, as the Jeremy facsimile is acting very similarly to the Yumi facsimile back in an earlier episode. So you're able to figure out what's going on, but at the same time, it is an idea that I like. I like seeing them starting to see them put the clues together that this is all a fake world, and that XANA's trying to lead them into a trap. And that was part of the reason why he wanted them to go to the scanners. He was going to use it to just get rid of them. Although, to be fair, if XANA had as much control over the world as he did, I don't understand why he didn't just kill them right away. But again, maybe XANA wanted to see them squirm, and he just wanted to watch them walk into their deaths. Which again, that's a classic villain move. And it helps show more of XANA's sadism. So again, this episode is it's nice in that regard, and it is kind of cool again seeing them put the pieces together and how Jeremy finds a way to try and deal with it himself. Actually allowing himself to be virtualized and sent to the fake Caddick. And then once he arrives, XANA is just kind of like, good, I have them all, and he sends more of the facsimiles to try and just outright kill them. In Jeremy's case, though, I can kind of understand why he doesn't just have Jeremy walk straight to a trap, because he knows if Jeremy's there, because XANA knows that if Jeremy's there, then Jeremy already knows this place is fake. So for him, obviously, it would just be, okay, got him where I want him, kill him. So I like that. So I do legitimately like that, and it's part of the reason why and as such, and seeing them start to slowly see the errors in the world, like seeing people glitching, colors wrong, or conversations repeated, it is nice. But it also makes Odd and Over kind of look a little dumb, as Yumi's the one that mostly sees it. But again, it could be a very easy mistake, and again, Yumi saw more than they did, so whatever. And again, it helps showcase more of XANA's creativity in his villainous plans. He's legitimately just creating a facsimile to trick them and then have them walk into their deaths. It's interesting, and I like it. And what ultimately just trips him up is his ultimately what he doesn't, his lack of understanding. He cannot comprehend human beings or good or whatever. Like when he learns that he can't understand. Like, he doesn't understand that, he knows Jeremy would go in, but he thinks it's illogical for him to do so because he's afraid of going into the scanners, and he thinks that everyone else will think the same way, but they don't. It's like when he created a fake Yumi, and then when Sissy was hitting on Ulrich, and Ulrich called the the fake Yumi out about why she didn't say anything, and she said, "Well, she likes you. She's attractive. Why don't you just go out with her?" Again, it's just computer. It's just one. It's just like go to column A, column B. No complex thinking. Just straight logic. It's no emotion. And again, the only emotions that we seem to get from XANA are just Schadenfreude, suffering of others, and that's again something we see when the XANA Jeremy takes pot shots at Odd and Ulrich, that how they weren't able to get out of gym class and so forth, and how they didn't understand gym and yada yada yada. That's obviously just XANA being a complete and utter asshole. Again, it is nice seeing that side and shows his effective villain. But however, just like in the episode with the XANA Yumi, we once again see more of the dumber aspects of seeing more of XANA's personality. Namely, that when XANA is allowed to emote, he's a large ham and kind of falls into the standard villain tropes. Like when he goes completely, like when he's finally found out by all the kids, and then he just turns into this and turns the Jeremy facsimile into a monster, and then suddenly he says, "You'll die. You're going to die." Ha 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 ha! It's just dumb. It's just dumb, and again, it's just dumb. Again, that's one of the downsides of being able to see more of XANA's personality. On the upside, we can see him being more cold and cruel, and we see more of how much of a computer he is, how cold and distant he is from humanity, and the only understanding we can get from him is just disgust, like with Schadenfreude or taking pot shots, etc. That stuff you can understand, but then when he starts turning into but then when he starts trying to fall into the more traditional villain tropes, that's when I kind of start thinking, okay, yeah, this guy's weird. Again, as a villain, he's effective, and again, the whole idea of the virtual caddick is nice. It's a good Lotus Eater. It's a good Lotus Eater trap. Just sending all the kids into this fake world and then tricking them into walking into their deaths. And the only reason he slipped up was because one, Jeremy arrived, and two, the world was not a perfect copy. There were glitches, some things were inconsistent, etc. So again, I like those types of episodes. I like those types of plots. Just seeing them try to figure out the solution and then ultimately try to find a way out trying to find a way out as things start to go wrong. And I like those episodes, and this one is no exception. So, yeah, just overall, it's just an interesting episode. It's an interesting plot. I like seeing it develop. I like seeing how they get together. And again, I think the only downside is XANA. Plus side, and again, that one's just 50-50. When we see him acting cold and cruel and distant, etc., that's the side of XANA that I like. But when he starts going into the large ham, that's when I just kind of start to snicker. So yeah. Oh, but again, liked the episode. Really nice. Nice to see it develop. Overall, good episode. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.